Hello everyone, welcome to LED series. Today we have Mira Senoy with us. She's a pioneer in job-linked skilling for rural, tribal and young people with disabilities in particular. And she does it at scale. She has set up and led Easy MM, the country's first state government skilling mission, then consulted World Bank and UN across Southeast Asia. More importantly, she is now founder CEO of Youth for Jobs, which works on mainstreaming youth with disabilities in the workplace. And in 8 years, I think she has made this organization unique and she's a system changer. They are working now in 23 states of India, works with network over 500 companies. The work has won several prestigious awards, including MIT's Future of Work Inclusion Innovation Award, and it's a case in Harvard Business School. And she runs a portal called Not Just Art, which showcases work of artists with disabilities, and she writes books. She's here to share her experience and work in particularly the work in the areas of social inclusion and the disabilities, which is a big issue. And without taking much time, welcome you, Mira. And my first question to start the conversation, like, what are your initiative post-COVID, and how been your experience and learning so far? Over to you.
Thanks, Kirti. And it's good to see you after a long time in your new avatar, which I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I think post-COVID, in fact, in any crisis situation, you'll find that vulnerable segments of society, like the disabled, um, are really neglected. So we thought about this and we did several things. We did relief operations like giving provisions and food to the visually impaired because most of the shops were shut. We ran Karuna helplines in 11 of the poorest states. We did sign language videos so that the speech and hearing impaired could understand what the health precautions are. And several ministers actually took this from us and put it on their social handles. But I think we were very clear that we need to continue our work of economic empowerment for youth with disabilities, much more so in these difficult times when their parents' incomes were dwindling because most of them are marginal farmers. And they all were desperate to get some income or the other. So we launched Youth for Jobs online, which was really very challenging for us because first is these are less educated youth. Second is they're from rural areas, they are disabled, and it's the bottom of the pyramid. So we were, really wondering how to do this. What we did was, I think, something which helped us. We had a lot of discussions with the youth themselves saying, hey, listen, how long is your attention span? Because we all know in the online, you can't have 8 hours like the offline. So they all told us 3 hours. Then we asked them what kind of content would they like, we spoke to companies and got them on board to be guest lectures. That helped us. The other kind of challenges we had was what is LMS going to be? What kind of platform are we going to use? Because of connectivity, low bandwidth, okay? We wanted attendance to be there because it's known sometimes that in online, attendance may not be regular. We had to think of how can we do assessments regularly because the courses are not long duration. So all this, I think we need to figure out, and it was really not so easy, but I think we got there. What we did was we designed the course for 3 hours a day and 20 days. Um, we, um, our trainers, I think, needed incredible patience because while they knew WhatsApp, the youth, they knew SMS, but they didn't know Zoom, they didn't know Google Classroom. And you had to actually first teach them that before you could progress in the learning.
Right.
uh, but I think what we did was we tapped into an energy uh, of the youth to be digitally savvy in the times of isolation, because we had, wonderful stories coming in from the field of youth, um, quickly finishing whatever jobs they had to do and logging on to their lessons, of youth going near shops to catch, a better connection, of them downloading the previous day's lessons because their phone didn't have enough space.
Right.
Girls finished their housework fast and logged on in the afternoon sessions because it was the safety of their home. Parents wondered what was this boy or girl doing. So they would come and talk to our trainer and actually ask, "Kya ho raha hai?" And our trainer would explain to them, and they would feel so happy. So parents became good stakeholders for us in all this. And companies, because we had involved them right in the beginning, they began posting vacancies whenever they were first to us.
Okay.
Um, so I think these were the kind of things which helped us to scale.
Okay.
We moved from 18 states to 23 states of India currently, and we have a lot of youth enrolling from very remote areas, from Jammu and Kashmir, from Agartala, pockets which we'd not. So the other challenge was that where is the market? Because where are the jobs? Because companies and industries where we used to give jobs before for these youth with less education used to be entry level jobs in the service sector,
Right.
retail, hospitality, and all of them, as you know, there were many from remote areas. So there was a lot of work which we needed to do even at the market end. But we are able to give jobs, which is a good thing. And I just posted on FB, I think day before yesterday, we gave 89 youth jobs in one day from one city. So our work this particular work has been recognized by UNICEF as one of the 6 best practices in South Asia, because
Okay.
it's, as I said, it's a really vulnerable community.
Right, right. So for our audience, I think it's important to understand a bit of the profile of such youth, and who are they, what background they're coming. I know for sure you were working with disabilities, people with special abilities. So in that context, a bit about them as the stakeholders in this whole game, I think would be important. So who are they?
The youth, they have either locomotor disability or they're speech and hearing impaired or low vision. Because for those who are totally visually impaired, we have separate, they need a different approach. So we have, separate classes for them. Second is they have low education levels, which means either they are maybe 10th, 12th pass, and if they're less than that, then we do customized batches for them.
Okay.
Third is all of them come from either rural areas or tier 2 towns. And all their fathers are either marginal farmers or petty shopkeepers who've all been affected by this COVID situation. And I think about 30 to 35% of them would be additionally scheduled caste. So that's the kind of profile of our youth.
So that's very interesting because this segment in particular, all of us know been affected by COVID the most. So you're working with them and making them mainstream. And that's the reason why I thought we must talk to you to understand how it's been done and what are the learnings. So when you take them to the market from job or placement point of view, how been working with private sectors, or what is the response so far, and other stakeholders, maybe government, as they've been a big stakeholder in this game. So how do you work with them? What are the experiences of particularly private sector in this space?
The private sector actually works with us. We work with them very closely because they are important stakeholders for us. So one of the big difference between giving a job to a non-disabled youth, which I've done a lot before in my previous career, and a youth with disability is the fact that you have to do a lot of work at the company end. It's not enough just to take him to a company. You have to do a lot of work to make sure that the company understands disability. Because unlike the West, where you can see youth with disabilities on the road, and therefore people understand that there are youth with disabilities, in India, what you see on the roads are only disabled beggars.
Right.
So people cannot think that there can be ability in disability. So a lot of our work goes, in fact, when I began the work, it really struck me about the kind of questions companies asked. Companies would ask how, why, what, and these were all very deep mindsets. It's like what, in gender, for example, you do a lot of workshops for unconscious biases. So here also, these biases actually are really unconscious, and sometimes they're so deep that you're not aware of it. Okay.
Right.
So we do sensitization workshops. They used to be offline before, interactive, fun. Everything now, of course, has become online. So we
Yes.
do e-sensitization workshops. We help companies, companies tell us, okay, I'd like to hire because I feel good, but tell me where can I put these youth? So what we do is we look and analyze their various business divisions, the various job roles, and see which disability can go where and what's the kind of workplace adjustment you need to do. Then we also do accessibility audit. We help with the HR policies. In manufacturing sector, for example, we look at safety manuals. So we have a whole range of services which we do with the companies to make sure that our youth who's hired, he becomes productive, and the company should experience the benefit of hiring from this labor pool. Only then, if it helps his business, we don't want them to do it from a sense of pity or from a sense of CSR, because
Right.
that won't actually, really be sustainable. So this is how we manage to mainstream them. And I must tell you, out of the 500 companies we work, at least 50 companies, we work at multi levels, which means that the companies volunteer with us in different ways, in giving us content, in giving guest lectures. We have the international volunteers volunteering with us. Then they mentor us. And this mentoring model is really excellent. I would, really encourage everyone to look at it. We had a multinational bank mentoring with our visual impaired in Delhi.
Okay.
And over 2 years, we tweaked the model. Board was so impressed with it because not only did it help our visual impaired, of course it does, okay, because these are all from rural areas with less English, also blind on top of it, okay, so it really helped them. But
Right.
it helped the employees also equally much, okay. They were so inspired, they realized how people with challenges actually, the way they struggle to really make it, and that makes you feel not so blasé about the kind of environment you are. You don't take it for granted, and you start actually experiencing, a joy in having what you have.
Right. Right.
So that's a tremendous shift which is taking place.
Absolutely, absolutely. See, I get three things. One is you are working with the extreme vulnerable sections. You are also working at the extreme in terms of corporates who are giving jobs, and very softly, very sweetly, you put the whole transition of bringing training through a virtual mode. So all these three I found very interesting elements of making skilling for vulnerable sections more relevant. So you, and in 8 years time, you have actually achieved this in at a scale. So these examples, what you're saying, actually telling me that you have worked intensely to change the system at different levels. It's not easy, though you are putting it very, very softly, very candidly. But I think it is
Absolutely.
not so easy because I come from ground. I have worked with people,
Yeah.
so I know how difficult it is. So, as a system changer, how do you see yourself? What are your personal experiences in terms of making this happen?
Beautiful question, actually. And I think as our work evolved, I realized the importance of this. So our new product, which we started 2 years back, was for educated youth with disabilities. It's called the Able Plus College
Mm-hmm.
Connect program.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, our whole funding for that was for placements because that's what everyone loves us. We give jobs. Okay. As we started going to colleges, pooling together the youth with disabilities, assessing them, seeing what the gaps are, training them, placing them, I realized, what you're saying is so right. This is just not enough if we have to bring sustained change. If we really want to be a system changer, you have to work with the whole environment around you. So what did we do? First is we started bringing out knowledge products. Okay, we brought out a white paper on inclusion of PWDs in higher education. The Act mandates a 5% inclusion of the disabled in colleges. The
Mm-hmm.
actual reality is not even 0.4%. Now,
Oh dear.
what this does is that if a youth with disability is not educated, then he hits a career block. So therefore, it's really important. So
Mm-hmm.
this document we disseminated widely, and we're hoping we can get it ingrained also into policy.
You're right.
The second we did was a series of webinars for the educators and the trainers. And these dealt with various issues, right from what is disability, how do you admit or register a youth with disability into your college, what do you need to do, technology for online training. So a whole series of topics, including we used every webinar, we have a panel where 3 companies come and speak on what do we expect from the youth who are enrolled in your colleges to hire them. Okay. Now these have become so successful. We just started them after COVID because anything online is mostly after COVID. But we have over 800 people registering in these to understand this kind of topics, which is very important for them. And they're not just from India, they come from South Asia, from Mid East, the enrollments. I think when we work with the educators, with the trainers, bringing out knowledge document, my hope is that we'll become a system changer in the college system. And actually, what we are doing is, I call it the 3 concentric circles, which I'm sure you as a grassroots worker will understand. One circle is the education system,
Mm-hmm.
one circle is the corporates,
Mm-hmm.
and the other is the village community where we've touched about 7,000 villages to date. So in all these 3 areas, we have a model for bringing system change. What it will happen is that these 3 will intersect and you'll become a system changer, which will take the disabled from the vicious cycle of poverty, which all the studies show, into the virtual cycle of opportunity. That's my hope.
Fantastic. So, from our interest from local economic development scenario, what you just told about your approach, I think is very apt and very important for us to understand. That is the way in terms of changing the systems. So, to make the people who are supposed to be included in the mainstream systems are to be operated like this. So, this is very important for us to learn from you. And very quickly, when you look at the impact you have created, some examples in terms of income or kind of jobs, so that we know how it is really working for people where it matters the most.
I think it's good for me to tell you the third party studies because that's the best way of understanding your own work. So, several third party studies have been done on our work. And if I just broadly tell you what the trends are that the youth become educated, the youth become confident,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And for the first time, they start having aspirations.
Mm-hmm.
The second is that they develop a voice in their family because suddenly the most useless kid becomes an earning member of the family and
Right.
in the community because quite often these youth with jobs when they go back with their uniform the community looks at them with respect And we've had some very interesting cases where the landlord's son is not working. So here's this so-called useless earning something like 1,50,000 per year, okay, and helping his whole family. And the richer houses have their non-working sons. So this is on one level the change which is happening. We've also tracked what typically they do with their savings, and we find by and large what they do is they begin saving money, and youth with disabilities are much more. They continue the linkages with their parents. They're more loyal, especially to the mother.
Right.
So what they do is from the savings, first is they retire the high cost debt if the father has a loan. They buy assets like a television if the house doesn't have, and a big television. They don't buy small televisions. Uh, they always educate a sibling if they are not educated. So I think what happens, in fact, according to me, the best impact is I believe that everyone we touch, if there's one youth with disability who gets a job, the entire family comes out of poverty in a sustained manner, because for the first time you start getting regular income versus the erratic income of the parents. And I think that's what keeps people like us energized and on the path.
Right. So anything specific for girls or women?
Yeah, girls are the most vulnerable, as you know.
Right.
If I always say, if you're a girl, if you're disabled, if you're rural, if you're poor, you have four burdens on your shoulders. So, if the impact of our work on young men is is good, the impact on girls is actually magical. However, having said that, we are not able to always do dedicated batches of young girls with disabilities because employers are not willing to take them in large numbers. So we always have to mix the batches together because they don't take only girls. There are 2, 3 employers who used to work only with girls, who we've managed to get them to start working with girls with disabilities. But those are not too common.
Okay. Okay, so I think towards end, I would put this way, like you have been a system changer, you have done it at scale, 23 states is not a joke. So what are the reasons of success? What are the couple of things that has really worked at a macro level for you as the key drivers of change? If somebody would replicate you, it's difficult, but what are your suggestions?
One definitely is, I think you need to create a platform to bring all the stakeholders on board. You have to recognize that parents and community are big stakeholders, companies, government, and integrate them in your model at all stages. That's one. Second is, I think not just me, but my entire team has two beliefs. One is um, in the ability of the disability, and the second is that integrating these helps the business of companies. Unless you have these two unshakable beliefs, you really can't do this work. The third is that you need to use technology as a tool wherever possible for transparency,
Right.
for improving learning outcomes, and for scale.
Great. I think, Mira, this is fantastic. I know how difficult the segment you are operating and you are serving, and you put it so well. I'm 100% sure this talk would be reaching to people who are really trying to serve the vulnerables. And from our LED point of view, this is one most important area. And through your talk, I think we will be reaching out to those segments who want to understand this element as part of LED. So thank you very much. And it was really great having you on our show. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Kirti. Enjoyed it. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.